So I'll start this video by saying that I enjoyed building inside this case just because it has a completely different layout. Now, the motherboard position is the same and everything is the same, but we have a different position for the AIO, different way of cooling inside this case. And when I take a look back on my past videos and all the cases that I reviewed, I don't think I covered a case that has an AIO or radiator or anything similar to that up here. I know InWin had those cases before and everything else, but I simply didn't. So today we're going to talk about InWin F5. This is a full tower chassis that can actually accommodate loads of huge components. And not only that, this is something that is somewhat ideal for custom loop as well. And we're going to break it down, but that's not all, because we have something on front, we have something inside, we have something at the back, and of course quite interesting inner part right here that will definitely give you some ideas. Now, this case, first and foremost, what they mention in on their website is the front panel. Now, the front panel is, let's say, versatile. You can reorganize the panels as you wish, and even though this might not have any whatsoever idea when we're talking about cooling performance and all the other stuff, gives you somewhat the possibility to, let's say, modify it or create something of your own. It's not that much of versatility because you have 4 panels and you can just switch top 2 by switching them and the bottom 2, right? But it kind of is cool. And if there was a possibility to buy additional plates for the front panel, it will be quite cool. And this kind of brings us to the point where this case somewhat is ideal for modding, I would say. Now, when you take a closer look of the interior, what you get inside this case is outstanding because, first of all, let's start with the fan configuration. On front and rear, you get 3, well, basically 2 on front and 1 at the rear, 3 140 Neptune AN14 fans, 140 fans, and they're addressable RGB, they're daisy chainable, and inside the accessory box, of course, you get the extenders for PWM, 2 of those, 1 for the rear and 1 for the 2 front fans, and the same thing for the addressable RGB. So you get those cables, extensions, so you can connect them to your motherboard. Next to that, the case comes, let's say, naked. You don't get rubber grommets, and you can most likely see in the beginning of the B-rolls where there aren't any. They're all in accessory box, so you do have to place them yourself. This all depends on your personal preferences. Do you want them or you don't? Or you just simply want to add the last 2 or whatever to cover up the holes. It's all up to you to decide, of course. But then we go further. You have to place the standoffs for your motherboard on your own. They're not placed here, and unfortunately they aren't magnetic, so the screwdriver won't hold the part where it actually ties up the standoff. So you do have to fiddle around a bit. Gives that extra time to build inside this case. But what's really cool, and where we're talking about the fans in general, on the front you can go with 2 120 or 2 140. Honestly, I wouldn't even change the front ones. Then you go top 3 120 or 3 140, rear 1 120 or 1 140. The same thing goes for the rear as for the front. I wouldn't change them whatsoever. And then the bottom ones can go up to 3 120 or 3 140. Now for the radiator support, on the front you can go with 240 or 280. On top you can go 360, 420, and the bottom can go 360, 420 as well. Now this is outstanding because I'm not saying this because of AIO. Of course, if you go with an AIO, you're going to place it on top, right? But if you go with a custom loop, you can place 420 at the bottom, 420 at the top. I don't think you could squeeze 240 or 280 here on front when the 420 is right here, because the 420 is a bit longer, of course, than 3 140 fans. So it kind of collides. It's going to be a tight fit, but I won't go into that segment. But still, 2 420 inside this case, which is outstanding. And I really like the design. I really like the case. You have loads of openings here for, I don't know, placing some tubular pump press combo here, and it would look quite nice. quite lovely placed. Now, the whole design of this case and what it does is the front is intake, the rear is exhaust, the bottom is intake, the top is exhaust. So what happens here is that the front and the bottom ones give enough air for the GPU, which you'll see in thermals. Also, there's enough space for the first and foremost 12V HPWR cable, which is kind of cool, and the rest of the air goes up on top to push the air through the radiator and push it back out. Now, of course, there's a somewhat I don't know, you'll decide, you can decide that and write in the comments, the power supply. So I turned it because I was checking the black and white version on their official website. The black version has the fan pointing here towards the radiator. So the fans push the air through the radiator to the power supply and it exhausts it outside. So eventually it could create additional hot air running through the power supply. But then I went to check the white version. So the white version has the power supply turned on the other side. This goes into two segments. We have hot air running through your power supply, but still the radiator gets enough exhaust and the fans can actually push air through through the power supply and the rest of the air through the chamber at the back. But then if you rotate the power supply on the other side, it might block some exhaust from this left fan. So it's kind of, you'll have to decide. Honestly, you'll have to decide. Currently, what I did is I actually placed the power supply on the opposite side. So what happens here? This fan blows the air through the radiator, through the power supply, and pushes it out. I don't think it might damage the power supply, but as I said, do leave a comment and let me know. So let's go further with the specs. So it's, as already stated, full tower. We have SECC tempered glass for the black version. For the white version, we have SECC tempered glass plus wood. Motherboard compatibility 12 times 13-inch eATX, ATX micro, ATX mini, ITX, which is kind of logical. We have 8 PCI expansion slots for the horizontal position of the GPU and 3 vertical PCI expansion slots when the GPU is in vertical position. Now, riser cable is optional and it's not included in the case. And I need to mention something about that. Now, GPU length can go from 410 to 435 millimeters, and CPU tower cooler can go up to 180 millimeters, which is outstanding, of course. Now, I/O ports, we have one USB 3.2 generation 2x2 Type-C, two USB 3.2 generation 1, and HD audio combo, which is headset plus microphone. Internal drive bays, we have two 3.5-inch hard drives, or you can revert them to four 2.5-inch SSDs and additional two 2.5-inch SSDs. Power supply length can go up to 230 millimeters, and the total weight is kind of above 10 kilos. Now, going at the back side of the case, because as you can see, you have really loads of space. The back side of the case is forcing you to revert the AIO tubes on the other side. So they have a nice cutout here, and they kind of twist the tubes to make it look not tubeless, but to make it look kind of clean. You know, you can see the rams, you can see the 24-pin cable right here, and everything looks much, much cleaner with this design. But then we go to the back, and specifically I want to touch base with the top compartment. The top compartment is designed quite nicely, but there is a certain, not a flaw, but you have loads of cables dangling at the top, and if you go with the extenders, you have loads of cables at the top. Now, you could run them behind the motherboard and kind of use all those cables so you have an empty space at the top, which will give you nice airflow for the radiator to push the hot air at the back. But if for some reason you do have loads of cables and they create a mess and they're not organized, they could block the exhaust of hot air. So this will just accumulate air in that compartment, which of course isn't good. But after all, if you do slightly organize it better than just chucking the cables inside that compartment, it will be quite all right, because air eventually finds its way out and you won't be having any problems with heating up the radiator or anything similar to that. And I'll show you that in benchmarks quite shortly. Now, as already stated, at the back we have two 2.5-inch caddies and two 3.5-inch caddies, which can be reverted to four 2.5-inch caddies. loads of possibilities for the storage, loads of possibilities for the cooling, and I need to touch base for the vertical GPU. I wanted to place the GPU vertically, and this is specifically excellent for 12V PWR because the cable can be ran from top directly to the GPU. So there's no issues if the cable will eventually pop out or anything similar to that. It won't if you push it normally. It's quite normal. But what is the problem? It's not that difficult to notice this, but they thought of something which is kind of cool. They pushed the GPU much closer to the motherboard, which brings us to the point that the GPU has loads of space from the tempered glass, so it doesn't heat up because of it. And the bottom fans help cooling the GPU in vertical position, which is outstanding, of course, don't get me wrong. But then we go with the riser, so you don't get it, you need to buy it. 15 centimeters could work, 20 definitely not, because it's too long and the riser cable will just push the GPU from its position. The best way, and it will be a short tight fit, 15 centimeters. I think ideal length of the PCI riser will be 16 to 17, and yeah, that's it. That's the only problem. And of course, you do need to think about the RAM clearance. So I have here Kingston Fury Renegade, and the top part, as you can see from the close-up, doesn't interact, but the bottom part is the tallest that you can go because the GPU is so close to the motherboard, it actually goes right on top of your RAMs. It doesn't touch it, but just in case, don't go with the tall RAMs because, for instance, if you go with the Team Group, their new Extreme DDR5, it will definitely collide with the GPU and you'll have GPU not standing straight. It will definitely move on the side, moving the front further to the tempered glass, right? But then again, the GPU in vertical position needs to have some, let's say, backup here on the front because it does sag a bit. Since we're talking about the riser, nothing will be damaged. But just for the looks, I would definitely place it to hold the GPU straight, and that's all there is to it. Now it's time for the benchmarks, and you love these ones because wow, I'm so fascinated with the results. I just couldn't believe. So AIDA 64 Extreme Edition, as per usual, we have AMD Ryzen 9 7900X3D and MSI GeForce RTX 4080 Gaming X Trio. CPU went up to 84 degrees Celsius and the clock speed 4950 MHz. GPU went up to 66 Celsius degrees, which is outstanding, of course. Now, Cinebench scores are remarkable. We have 85 degrees throughout whole 10 tests. The clock speed was constant 4975, and then we have constant in benchmarks, which is outstanding because eventually it touched 26,700, but let's say regular and average was 26,650. And this is like, it's somebody would thought that I was writing this on top of my head because first, let's say, first four benchmarks were in like 20 Cinebench points difference. And then we have last five in 20 Cinebench points difference. So what can I say? This configuration, because we have like six 140 millimeter fans and three 120 here at the top, it's outstanding. And I'm really, really fascinated by the case. Of course, there will be some frustrations when building, and honestly, every case has them. We can't deny that. But with a complete different shape and different layout and different orientation of the radiator and how you build inside this case will definitely give you that enthusiasm to build in it. And this is quite cool. Now, what I can say about this case, because I tested the MR36 from InWin before and it got lower scores in another case than in this one, I can say that this case deserves a PC Crazy Performance badge and PC Crazy Approved badge, because I do have to say everything is on pegs, front panel, side panels, tempered glass. But those pegs are so tight, but you can still push them out quite nicely. Even if you don't do a perfect cable management, you can push the side panel and it will hold. That's it. So guys, I was so enthusiastically speaking about this case and how I was so impressed that I forgot to turn it on during the whole video. But luckily you have the B-roll and you could check out the build from close up. Regardless of everything, you can see how it looks nice when it's even turned on. The huge tempered glass looks outstanding, and it definitely doesn't cover the view of anything. It's not dark tinted, it's really nice, viewable. And if you're one of those people that really like to check out their builds and they're creating something for your own, for yourself, this is definitely it. So yeah, that's all that I can say for today's video. So don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, click the notification bell, and before you go, don't forget to check the links for the MR36. Don't forget to check the links for the Neptune fans and the InWin F5, which is the main star of the show. And finally, I do have an InWin power supply finally, which is P1052. This is a 1,050 watts platinum power supply, fully modular with ATX 3.0 and all the other stuff. So guys, links are in the description. Thanks for watching. See you very soon. Bye bye.